Well, the Tea Party played a big role in the 2010 elections, but so far they don't seem to have much clout in the 2012 primary season, at least according to pollster Scott Rasmussen, who just asked voters about the Tea Party. Take a listen.
Republicans have a much more positive view of the Tea Party. In fact, a majority of Republicans say they still think the Tea Party is going to help, but Democrats overwhelmingly say, nah, it's a bad group. Unaffiliated voters, they're also losing their taste for tea.
Losing their taste for tea. Deneen Borelli has extensive ties to the Tea Party. She's a columnist for the Daily Caller and a Fox News contributor. Matt Kibbe is president and CEO of Freedom Works and a strong supporter of the Tea Party movement. And Gina Loudon is a radio talk show host and Tea Party activist. Nice to have you all here today.
Thank you.
Nice to be with you.
Matt, certainly you might not agree with what Scott Rasmussen had to say about the Tea Party overall, but how do you think the Tea Party has changed from 2010 to 2012?
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. It's evolved from a protest movement into a very localized process of building out our communities district by district. I'm actually going to be in Houston in a couple days at Saddle Up Houston to try to focus and get all the Tea Party activists to choose one candidate for the U.S. Senate there. And that's the hard work of changing the process that doesn't really capture the attention of the media or anybody else, because we're not out there protesting on the streets.
Why are you choosing to focus locally, Matt, if I could just follow up there for a moment?
Well, that's a natural evolution, I think, of a very sophisticated movement, because where you win these fights is by changing opinion on the ground, neighbor to neighbor, face to face, and that machine will become the get out the vote mechanism that had such an impact in 2010. I think it's stronger in 2012, but you can't see it.
Gina, you have actually gone out and publicly endorsed a presidential candidate, so you're choosing to go more national rather than local. Tell us a little bit about who you're personally choosing to endorse and why you're choosing to do that.
Well, I am helping to recruit local candidates. In fact, we just today recruited a local candidate against Congressman Baucus for the next primary because of the corruption going on there. So we are working locally as well. I personally, though, have chosen to endorse Rick Santorum for two reasons. One, I believe he will speak well to the Reagan Democrats, being a blue-collar candidate. I think that's what we need in this race, but also because I want to see a candidate that will be accountable to the conservative constitutional type voter. And I don't see many of the candidates in this race, if elected, I see them thinking of themselves having been elected in spite of the Tea Party, sort of, where I see Rick Santorum as one who knows he needs us, and if he ends up in that top spot, he's going to know who to thank for it and be accountable to us. I think those are important reasons to support a candidate like Rick Santorum, but I'm doing that independently.
And one of the things that you mentioned there is that some candidates or some feel that one might be elected in spite of the Tea Party. And Deneen, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. If you look at Scott Rasmussen's polling, it shows that most of the folks that he polled have an unfavorable opinion of the Tea Party, and they think that the Tea Party movement will actually hurt the Republican Party in the 2012 election. Where do you think that perception is coming from?
Well, as it was pointed out previously, the Tea Party doesn't do a lot of rallies now. In fact, they do a lot of events on the local level. And I can speak from experience on that. I've spoken at a number of events last year, Tea Party meetings and events that they had on the local level. And I'm also scheduled to speak at a number of events this year across the country. So people are very engaged and they are involved. If you look at the 2010 election, it was mentioned that the Tea Party movement was very influential. I think they'll be very influential in 2012 as well.
There's been still a lot of blame going around, Matt, and I'd like you to listen to the head of the DNC who was just talking in New Hampshire. She was talking about political discourse in Washington overall since well, basically this period of the financial crisis. Take a listen to what she has to say.
I hesitate to place blame, but I have noticed it take a very precipitous turn towards edginess and a lack of civility with the growth of the Tea Party movement. What the Tea Party has done is they have taken it to a different level. And so when they come and disagree with you, that you're not just wrong, you're the enemy.
Matt, I hear what you're saying about this being a local movement and really something from the ground up, but that's a woman with a national platform that's really taking on the Tea Party head on. So what do you do about something like that? Do you take that on? Do you disregard it? What do you think that means for the movement overall?
Oh, I think we do take it on, and I think the men and women of the Tea Party are particularly sick and tired of that kind of demagoguery coming from the Democrats. But to me, it suggests that we continue to be important and relevant and powerful if the head of the Democratic establishment feels the obligation to say things like that. That's why the Tea Party brand has taken a beating. But I think that's the price of leadership. What she doesn't talk about are the issues that animate the Tea Party. Those are still defining this election. We have both Republicans and Democrats speaking to the fact that the budget needs to be balanced, speaking to the fact that the government has its foot on the economy and we can't create jobs.
But not only that, what about the Occupy Wall Street movement? We have those on the left who are desperate to cling to something to support their initiatives, and they focus on the Occupy Wall Street movement, who is being very disruptive, where you have the Tea Party who gets the permits and go to their places to protest and go home. I mean, are you kidding me? But that's what the left is doing.
Gina, a quick final thought here.
I completely agree with what they both said. You know, as long as they're continuing to mention us, we're still extremely relevant, or they wouldn't be battling us. Why would they? And secondly, all you got to do is hold us up to, you know, when the left decides to protest, the kinds of things they do, and look at our beautiful, clean record. Any park ranger in the country can tell you we leave the places better than we find them. I think that speaks a lot to our character and also to exactly what we're planning to do in this next election. We work hard, and we're going to continue to do that.
It sounds like we have to talk to some park rangers, verify that. But an interesting point, and interesting to hear about the local activity, because that's one of the questions we had in our editorial meeting the other day, is whether or not maybe we're just not covering the local events as much. Maybe there's the Tea Party movement that's still ongoing in those local areas, and that's something that we wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit more about. Thank you to you all, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.